Hello, friends, and welcome to Binge O'Clock, the podcast where we watch something and then we talk about it. I'm Joy Selden. I've seen almost everything.
I'm Danielle, and I've seen almost nothing.
And here we are with season 4.
I can't believe we're
Galavant.
already at season 4. I mean, I was labeling my notes document the other day and was like, season 4? And how far we've come, you know? All the way from Almost Human to Fringe to Galavant.
I know. So some of you may be wondering, okay, so before we get into why we chose Galavant.
Okay.
For those of you listening to Binge O'Clock who might be new to the podcast, welcome. We basically already did the pitch in the intro, but, just to quickly sum up the things we're looking for in a show or a movie. Well, no, a movie you can just watch in one evening. So that's a one and done. But a TV show to watch, we're looking for something more that's run its course or that was canceled too early. Basically something between 1 and 5 seasons long, ideally with an ending because those are just juicier. But we'll take what we can get. And then depending on the show and the length of episode and how monster of the week it is, we will watch anywhere between 1 and 5 episodes per podcast episode. So if you're following along, just be sure to listen in the intro to which episodes we're have watched. We done watched. That was the thing I wanted to say.
Which episodes we are recording a podcast episode about.
It's been a day, friends. We record on Mondays, and maybe that's a mistake. But we'll see. What was that sound? That was your Monday sound.
That was my Monday sounds. That's exactly what that was.
But yes, so here we are in season 4. We chose Galavant because, honestly, we wanted to do some more animated series. We just finished Kipo and the Age of the Wonder Beast. Please feel free to check that out.
Yep.
Such a good show. I love it. I watch it over and over again, which is, the joke. It was just such a good show, but it reminded me of a lot of other animated series that are very similar, like Centaur World, which we'll probably get to maybe next season or the season after that.
Can't wait. Love Centaur World.
Yeah, just because it's so juicy. What a juicy show. And, but we didn't want to do 2 animated shows in a row, so we figured we would break it up. And the median between Kipo and Centaur World is kind of Galavant.
Is somehow Galavant. We're somehow meeting in the middle between these 2 shows. I mean, listen,
I would like to defend my choice.
I was going to say, speaking as someone who hasn't seen it, the show, I'm going to need you to explain that.
Well, now, wait a minute. But you have seen parts of Galavant.
Season 1. I've seen season 1.
You saw season 1.
A very long time ago. I saw it as it was airing. And so I remember little to none of it, other than it reminded me of everything I had heard about Robin Hood Men in Tights. Although, at that point in time, I hadn't seen that. So people kept on telling me that this is what Robin Hood Men in Tights was, and I just accepted that.
What a weird. Okay, wait. It's not as weird a pull as I thought it would be.
Okay.
But then again, you're. I also have to remember that your circle of friends is not completely full of musical theater nerds.
But it has some.
It has some, right? But for me, Galavant is like a Ren Fair goes to a musical.
Yes.
And that's it.
Is that not what Robin Hood Men in Tights is? She asks.
I feel like, well, you've seen it now, haven't you?
I
thought I showed it. Didn't I show it to you when we did Mel Brooks?
Yeah, you're right. You probably did.
Whoops. So, for anybody new listening to the show, if this is your first time listening, the reason this podcast was kind of born was out of essentially me trying to get Danielle to watch things that I desperately wanted her to see because she hadn't seen a ton of stuff. So every time I referenced something, it was like, oh yeah, from movie X. And it was like, I haven't seen it. So it kind of became a running joke.
Yes. That I haven't seen it.
That you haven't seen it. And so we just decided to start Wednesday night movie nights, sort of based on that. And I don't know. I really enjoyed our banter. So I was like, what if we did a podcast?
What if we recorded it? Okay, now that I'm thinking back, I know that you showed Robin Hood Men in Tights as part of your Mel Brooks run, but I think that I missed out on that day.
Oh, did you? You might have.
Because I saw the history one.
Yes. Which is like my top 2.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that one and Spaceballs sort of vie for first place in my head.
I saw that one too, thanks to that month. But there were a couple days that month where I was busy and I wasn't able to make it. And I think that Robin Hood Men in Tights was one of them. And so that continues to be a reference that people use to help me understand, quote, what Galavant is. But now I just think that Galavant is what Robin Hood Men in Tights is.
I mean, you may not be wrong. Robin Hood Men in Tights has a time and a place. I just, for some reason, the Robin Hood story is just so specific that I have trouble equating that with the story of Galavant. It's a completely different story. Like Robin Hood never had to, I mean, we'll get there. But Robin Hood, it was never referenced that Robin Hood had absolutely terrible BO, for example. Like, that is not a thing I remember from the classic fairy tale history.
I mean, I don't know about you, but my first Robin Hood was the fox. So,
yes. Well, we're getting a little off topic. I promise we'll return to Galavant. Welcome to the tangent part of the show. But I know I saw the Disney's Robin Hood when I was very tiny. Like, I recognize moments from it, but I can't, like, if I actually sat here and thought about it, like, it didn't grab me as much as some other Disney properties have. So the Robin Hood, honestly, the Robin Hood Men in Tights is the one that is my touchstone more than anything.
Wow.
But I know. We were a very Mel Brooks heavy
What I'm hearing
household.
Is that I'm just going to have to make up what I missed. And at some point, we're just going to have to do a movie night. And I'm going to have to watch that because, I remember
what a perfect opportunity while we watch Galavant for you to have
Galavant. And then I'll have an actual point of reference. I remember the Disney one fairly well, but I'm reasonably sure that's because I was in love with Robin Hood the Fox. And so watched it many times.
There was a running joke with, I think it was Zootopia when Zootopia came out, where we were all like, Godspeed to the children who are now having the same like feels about foxes that a bunch of us had when we were little.
Yeah, but different. The vibe was different. I don't know.
The vibe was totally different. Like, we could get into that, but that's a story for another day. Today we're here to talk about
cartoon foxes. Yes, which going back. Explain to me why Galavant is the median between Centaur World and
everything we're going to watch in this sort of 3 series season block is like you have your fetch quests on some of them. But you basically have like a core group of people who are on a journey together. And like you have it in Kipo, you have it in Centaur World, you have it in Galavant, number 1. Number 2, you have a ton of awesome music in Kipo, and you have an actual musical series in Centaur World. And here you get the musical. But it's a little more cynical.
Yeah.
That's number 2. And then 2.5 is how cynical Kipo was at times.
Yeah.
Is like I feel like I can hear songs from Galavant that should be in Kipo in the Age of the Wonder Beasts.
Oh.
Like there are some songs that I'm like, Benson 100% sings that part.
Whereas that is completely absent from Centaur World.
Exactly.
Ah, interesting. Okay. So
Centaur World is very like they don't do a lot of cynical, right? Like they do a lot of lighthearted, dark-hearted.
Doom and gloom.
Did I just create the opposite of whatever lighthearted is? I don't know.
Made sense to me.
Good. That's all that matters.
I suppose the other opposite of lighthearted would be heavy-hearted? Anyway.
Anyway, we're here to talk about Galavant. So Galavant is from 2015, so some things are going to be a little dated.
But hey. you know, as established in our season 1, anything pre-2015 is questionable.
Has a million
at best.
asterisks.
Yeah, questionable at best. So this one is right on the cusp of that cutoff. Yeah. Arbitrary cutoff. Let us make that clear.
Super arbitrary cutoff. There's look, listeners, sometimes we go back and forth between anything before like 2018, 2019. Yeah, like, there are things in the aughts and the teens that we just don't talk about. But we've already done it. We've been talking for 10 minutes and and we haven't talked about the show at all. Okay, so Galavant was 2015, 2016. It has a bunch of different directors sort of throughout its run. I think the person who's directed the most episodes was John Fortenberry. It also has a bunch of different writers and staff writers. Those are our cats. That one's mine. We'll see if it makes the cut. Dan Fogelman, I believe, created the series. And he was also, I believe he also wrote about 4 or 5 episodes. It stars Joshua, oh boy. Oh no, I don't know how to say his last name. S-A-S-S-E. Sass?
I have no
Sasse?
idea.
Joshua Sasse. Timothy Amundsen. Good job. Mm-hmm. Vinnie Jones, who plays Gareth, who I absolutely adore. What a good character actor. He's so good. Mallory Jensen, who plays Queen Magdalena. Oh, yes. Karen David, who plays Princess Isabella. Mm-hmm. Luke Youngblood, who plays Sid. And that's sort of like all the big players
Main
we get
cast.
in the first few episodes. Yeah. We have a few guest stars in episode 2. We have Jean Hamm, played by, oh no.
Oh,
What's
right.
his name?
I mean, that actor is one of those actors who I'm like, I know that person, but I can't name a single other thing that they're in. John Stamos. There we go.
Wow, we are tired. I hope you forgive us, folks.
To be fair,
we're doing our best.
I think that even at my most awake, I would not have been able to tell you that man's name. At my most awake, I would not have been able to.
Well, it's John Hamm, played by John Stamos, who's hilarious in this role.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can sort of hop into it. It's the overarching theme of Galavant is, as I mentioned before, a Ren Fair meets a musical. Mm-hmm. So much with our season of Fringe, if you hate the opening, the first 2 minutes, like if you cannot stand the fact that it has this big, what did you call it? It was like this big
townsfolk
musical
song.
Number. Yeah.
Yeah. The townsfolk gather and they're singing and they're filling us in on the details of the world. And Galavant himself, sort of.
It's literally an exposition song.
Yeah. Which is pretty typical for a musical, right? To open up with a bunch of people just setting up the setting for you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's perfect for the thing it does.
Yes. Yeah.
It sets up the characters beautifully. It does a great job of that. It's just one of those things where it's like, if you hated that, the rest of the show is going to be like that. And just join us next season. I totally understand. No pressure.
I'll be honest. I would say if you hate the first song, but the reason you hate the first song is that you listen to it, watch it, whatever, and you think to yourself, I've seen this before. What new something does this show have to offer? Then give it a little bit, because it does end up with a nice little twist in that this isn't just a story about a knight who's going to save his princess from the king.
It definitely, if you can make it to, I would say, the title card, because I'm pretty sure all of that happens before the title card, before it actually says Galavant on the screen.
No, I don't think so.
Does it not?
Maybe it does, and you're right. I've seen it. I watched it once, and I didn't note where the title card came in.
That's all right. I'm pretty sure. I mean, also, if you watch any of the trailers for this, I remember when the trailers came out for Galavant, I was very excited, and I watched the trailer, and I was like, this is amazing. This is going to be so cool.
Yeah.
And it has that moment where Magdalena does the thing and has the twist, right? Mm-hmm. It has it in the trailer. And I was like, yes, this is why this show is going to be so great.
Yeah. Okay. So just to spell it out for our dear listeners, the story setup is that Galavant and Magdalena are wildly in love. And then King Richard steals Magdalena away, kidnaps her, is going to force her to marry him. Galavant gallops off to the palace. Galavant gallops off to the palace to save her. Upon arriving, he pours his heart out after handily defeating a horde of guards.
Yeah, like literally every guard in the castle, including his fans.
It's perfect. And so he pours his heart out and tells Magdalena, I can offer you love, basically, and not fame and fortune. And then she goes, actually, I'm going to go with the fame and fortune. And there it is. You're right. I think that is where the title card happens. That's also where kind of a funny, kind of a joke I enjoyed happens. And I think another good example of if you don't like this, then you're not going to like this show, which is when Magdalena then says to Galavant, I hope we can be friends. And then Galavant gets literally gut punched by Gareth.
And then like kicked in the face. Well, first kicked in the face by King Richard, but he's bad at it. And the subtitle that I had a little tap.
Yeah. Tap. But I liked the idea of like an emotional gut punch followed immediately by a literal gut punch. And I was like, aha, that is the show that I'm about to see. And I'm here for it.
You know, you kind of have to suspend, you know, it's like a suspension of belief thing a little bit because obviously everyone's singing. But obviously it's like it's not real it's real quote unquote medieval times. Like it's not the real Dark Ages. I think it's 1256 in the canon of the show, but it's like I don't expect any, accuracy. I assume the costumes did what they could.
I don't think that anyone walking into this show would be expecting accuracy. If anyone did,
I hope not.
Many questions.
I know. So the first episode, there exactly as you said, that's your setup, right? The opening song is actually called Galavant, which I love. And it's just the refrain is literally just his name over and over again. Because he's supposed to be this big, amazing knight. And he is, right? He slays dragons. He does all these different kinds of things. Or was. And then a year later, after this happens, he is drunk, broke, destitute, and sleeps all day.
And just has utterly given up on himself and refuses to help anyone for any price. Until, of course, just the right incentive comes along, which is the opportunity to take revenge on King Richard for stealing Magdalena away from him, which, listen, you're right, suspension of disbelief. If he really wanted to get King Richard back, he could just go do it, you know? He didn't really need a princess to tell him to do that, but fine.
King Richard hasn't gone anywhere. He's still in the same castle he's been in this whole time.
Right there, go get him. But fine. I'm not upset.
It's fine.
So there's King Richard, there's Magdalena, there's Galavant. There is, of course, Galavant's loyal squire, Sid, who we should talk about in a little bit. But
love Sid. We'll get to Sid.
The final character that we were introduced to, who I assume, if we're talking about the core characters in the show, is Princess Isabella Maria Lucia Elisabetta. Of Valencia. Yes.
I love her.
Let's talk about her.
She's pretty much, it's hard for me to have a favorite character in the show because I kind of love all the main cast. Really, really hard. She's probably in my top 3.
I was going to say, speaking of favorite characters, again, I'm 2 episodes in and don't really remember anything beyond these first couple of episodes. I haven't taken a shine to Galavant yet. I don't love him, but I assume that will come. Whereas with Princess Isabella, I basically liked her immediately, especially once her twist is revealed, which I also particularly enjoyed.
And we'll get to that. But I like that she, we'll also find this out later, but she is a character who really enjoys intrigue and playing other parts and things like that, and acting. Mm-hmm. She actually really enjoys acting, which I think is very funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's something really fascinating about a princess who sort of understands the stakes and undertakes things themselves, right? Mm-hmm. Like a very can-do princess that's just like, yes, I am going to go to this knight and ask this knight for help, right? Yeah. I'm not going to send a messenger. I'm not going to do it third party. I will go personally myself so that this knight understands how, intense this request is.
And there's also the whole reason she got into this situation in the first place, right? Which is that Magdalena, being the greedy queen that she is, I suppose, we don't know much about her beyond that. Well, we know that she basically grew up in poverty, right? And has vowed never to live that life again. Mm-hmm. And so has taken this hard left and has taken the fame and fortune and is now queen, right? Queen Magdalena would really like the Jewel of Valencia. And so she has King Richard kidnap Princess Isabella's parents, and this part is a little fuzzy. Somehow, some way, Princess Isabella is underneath the floor in King Richard's castle.
Yes.
Just unbeknownst to King Richard, while her parents are captives there. How'd that happen? We don't know. It's a little bit, they scienced a cure, right? Regardless.
A little bit.
Regardless.
They didn't really explain it.
They didn't really explain it. What I'm trying to get to here is that finally King Richard threatens to kill Princess Isabella's father. And rather than just staying in the cellar where she would have been nice and safe and she had the jewel and she could have maybe eventually escaped on her own, she busts out of the cellar in order to save her father, and that's what ends up getting her caught. So 100% a can-do princess. Yeah. And a princess who is going to save herself in any way she can, which means, at this point, tricking Galavant.
And she is obviously a very capable woman. Mm-hmm. And there's something really nice about that.
I mean, can we talk about the sword fighting scene, or do we have to do this all in order?
I don't think we have to do it in order. I think the only thing I want to touch on in the first episode is we get these two vignettes of what Galavant is dealing with and what King Richard is dealing with, right? Mm. Neither of them are happy. Mm-hmm. Galavant is sort of, what we would call clinical depression these days. And King Richard is sort of stuck in this loveless marriage without communication or trust or anything, really.
I mean, Magdalena, by the way, has lied to the king, told him that she's taken a vow of celibacy, and is meanwhile cheating on him with a court jester. And everyone knows, except for King Richard. Except
for the king. Bless him. Mm-hmm. He's a sweet summer child. Will not be convinced otherwise. I don't know what she sees in that jester. He's just not funny. It's like, he's not funny. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because he really isn't.
No, not at all.
He's also not funny at all. His jokes fall very flat. Except with Magdalena, because
she's not there for the jokes.
No.
And that's the most we can say about on this PG-13 show.
True. I guess we should talk about that a little bit. This show's a little raunchy. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't show it to very young children. They might be a little confused.
Or you could show it to extremely young children, because then they would just hear singing and see dancing and think like knights and wouldn't pick up on anything that was actually happening.
If they don't understand the words, then it should be fine.
It's like when I was very, very, very young and watched Beetlejuice.
Yeah, and had no idea what it was, I'm sure.
Didn't know that was a kind of raunchy movie.
Until you got older and went, oh my.
Oh my, it's not just a monster movie.
Surprise. Wait, was that one? Well, see, now I have to know. Was that one of the ones that was edited or no? Do you remember? Maybe you don't.
I don't remember. I don't remember well enough.
That's okay. Mm-mm. We have King Richard in this loveless marriage to this like very textbook shrew of a wife, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you kind of have a little sympathy for her by episode 2 because she talks about how poor she was and like how much that sucked. And she really doesn't want to be poor again.
I like that they built her out a little bit that way.
Yeah. Yeah. She's ultimately like very blunt and very no filter and just very aggressive.
Which, frankly, actually makes her a very good pairing for King Richard. Like, they actually ultimately have quite a bit in common.
I know.
Like, aside from the fact that she isn't physically attracted to him, his main hobbies include raising taxes, taking advantage of the poor, and genocidal war. You know?
I know.
Like, he's not a good dude.
But he's careless. He's like a careless, violent, and mean person. Because we have the example of the cook where he didn't even fully realize that he had fired the cook's father. Right. And it was just like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm such a bully sometimes. And it's like, how do you not know that you've fired 4 cooks?
Not even fired. I think had killed. Like, had executed.
He might have.
That's what I wrote down. The king had the cook's father killed. And then, like, 4 generations of this family have all been executed by the king and his, not lineage, but the opposite of lineage. Like, lineage going back.
Pass.
At any rate, yeah, relatives. I mean, like, I hear you. I think that he does play the part a bit of the buffoon, you know? Mm-hmm. But he's still not a good dude. There's a lot he's doing that's purposeful. And, you know, when his wife tells him to get the jewel of Valencia at any cost, he didn't have to threaten to kill Princess Isabella's father while the mother was watching. That's just what he elected to do. So,
I mean, I feel like that wasn't even a threat. I feel like he would have followed through on that had the daughter not popped up.
100% that would have happened. So anyway, I think that they are actually a rather good match, other than the fact that she isn't attracted to him. Womp womp. Yeah.
Well, and he also genuinely wants a wife who's going to care about him. Like, he genuinely wants a wife who is going to take any kind of modicum of interest in who he is as a person. Mm-hmm. And, like, she doesn't care. She does not care.
For whatever reason. I mean,
she hates him.
Some reasons.
I mean, maybe it was the kidnapping. Man,
maybe it was the kidnapping. Maybe they got off on the wrong foot and they got off on the wrong foot. Never start a wedding with a kidnapping, as he says. You know, really good advice. But then it's made worse by things like the way that he's fed by the cook every day.
Exactly.
You know, just like...
You know, he does all of that. He convinces Princess Isabella to trick Galavant into this sort of jealous rage of like, oh, no, I need to go rescue my lady love, right? Mm-hmm. And he convinces himself that he's going to kill Galavant somehow, even though he's like barely ever held a sword.
Yeah.
So I like that sort of episode 1, like really introduces you to all the characters and like where we are and what's happening. Episode 2 is just I love it so much. It's like we get to deal with the actual, you know, some of the underlining of what drives those things we learned about the characters in episode 1.
Yeah.
Right. Not so much for Princess Isabella. We got a lot from her in episode 1, but more for Galavant and being like, you know, he got really knocked down when Magdalena like just completely rejected him in front of a room full of people on her wedding day.
On her wedding day.
I know. On her wedding day.
We find out that he, unsurprisingly, has some underlying self-esteem issues.
Gee, I wonder why.
Right? And so he's falling into his old patterns. Could it be?
And it just, like, I you know, there's this moment where Princess Isabella is like, well, you know, we need, what is it? Don't they need food or they need provisions or something? And it's like, well, if you go to a joust, you could win the grand prize.
Right. Oh, yes. They were going to stop at a tavern, but they don't have any money.
Yes.
And so, yes, they find a poster for a joust. Unfortunately, Galavant is wildly out of shape and out of practice. And so Princess Isabella, being super clever, saves the day. Yeah. She not only finagles a way to have him skip to the end by merit of the tournament so that he has an extra day to practice, she also trains him.
Yes. And I love that we find out that he's wildly out of shape because the opening song of this episode is Hero's Journey, and he is exhausted by the time he gets to the end of it.
Uh-huh.
And he can't really quite finish the long note at the end. And he's out of shape. That was a long song.
I really enjoyed Hero's Journey. I think that it might be one of my favorite songs in these 2 episodes.
I mean, it's a really entertaining song. Like, it's really good at defining exactly where Galavant is and having, like, super little secret stuff for Princess Isabella. Yes. And Sid being able to be snarky. Like, it just...
Well, that's the thing. Like, I think they played the 3 characters off of each other so well. Yeah. And literally like 27 minutes into our airtime, right? So we haven't even had that much time to build any sort of rapport between these characters. And this show, or this song rather, does it pretty instantly. I also liked that this song had quite a bit of the fourth wall breaking, which you sort of alluded to before, and made me think about our Kipo title cards episode. Because... You know, like in this show, the characters are singing, right? Mm-hmm. But they're not in the universe of the show actually singing to each other. And it kind of, the show and the songs will kind of play with the idea that sometimes when a character sings something, they're showing how they feel. But in a real musical, that doesn't always mean that everyone can actually hear you. Right. Like, if you are in love with someone else and you sing about how much you are in love with them, even though they're standing right next to you, they're not supposed to hear that. Right. But in this song, they do.
Yes.
And I thought that was fun.
It's so much fun. I like Hero's Journey. It's a fun sort of little romp of a song. I enjoy it.
Do you have a different favorite song? Not to take us too far off track.
I really like Maybe You're Not the Worst Thing Ever.
Oh, that's my second favorite. That's my second favorite one. That one's pretty good.
I just have such a soft spot for a song that's like describing all the terrible, awful, it's not even terrible, awful things people do, but like things that you don't like about someone. Mm-hmm. And then maybe you could like learn to love them, maybe like a little bit. Like it's my favorite like enemies to lovers trope, right?
Like enemies to lovers and also the perfect level of cynical, which you're right. This show is all over cynical. And that's what that song is. It's like, maybe we could grow to love each other, ? And that's this show's version of a love song.
Exactly. But so they go to the joust. Princess Isabella does all the work. Yep. Well, that's not true. She makes Galavant do a lot of work.
I mean.
And then there's a montage.
There's a montage
with another very good like 80s ballad montagey thing, which is great.
Yeah, sort of an Eye of the Tiger style song, maybe.
Yes, it was called Stand Up. It was called Stand Up, and it was pretty great. If you listen to some of the lyrics from it, you're just like, this is actually perfect. Thank you. So they train really hard, and then it's like, I think Galavant says something like, but what if I don't rise to the challenge? And Princess Isabella is like, you leave that to me. Mm-hmm. You just get a good night's sleep. Mm-hmm. And then she goes to John Hamm. Played
by John Stamos.
Yes.
What is John Hamm a play on?
Probably the actor John Hamm.
Really?
It has to be.
I mean, that's the only thing that came to mind for me as well. But then I didn't get the joke. You know what I'm saying? Like, why are we alluding to John Hamm in episode 2 of this show?
I don't know. Like, is it because he's supposed to be a looker?
If he were actually played by John Hamm, and then they named the character John Hamm, like that would be very funny. I know. I don't know. I guess I don't get it. Is what I'm saying.
You know, I feel like that's just a question mark. I feel like there's probably something somewhere that's like, why did they name this character? Hey, listeners, if you know, get at us. We're on Twitter and Facebook. Explain it.
I mean, like, if you just like vamp for a second, I can bare minimum look up when Mad Men came out.
No, it's fine. Oh, no, Mad Men was definitely a thing. Well, you'll also notice that Westeros was a thing, too, because we had, like, Winterfell on that directional card.
Yes. I noticed
which I also really love.
But, like, how far into Mad Men were we in 2015? I
feel like Mad Men was the aughts, wasn't it?
Oh, okay. So episode 1 of Mad Men aired in 2007.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa. And wait, it ran on AMC until, so 2015 is when it ended.
Oh.
So it was wrapping up right as Galavant was coming out. Interesting. All right, guess it's a Jon Hamm joke. Again, don't know why.
I wonder if I type in why Jon Hamm Galavant.
This is a thrilling moment for our dear listeners as they wait for us to Google this joke that neither of us understands. Because there's no part of this character that actually alludes to, at least as far as I understand him, Jon Hamm or the character of Don Draper, right? And I don't even think in the context of Galavant, it doesn't really matter whether Jon Hamm
it literally,
is good looking.
I'm pretty sure it's just a play on the name.
Okay.
Somebody thought it would be funny to have Sir Jon Hamm. And I mean, all by itself, it is pretty funny. Oh, wait. Speaking of songs, sorry if we can rewind a little bit. I know I mentioned briefly about King Richard.
Yes.
Talking about how he can, fight and kill Galavant, and then Magdalena would be his. That is done in song. That is done in a song called She'll Be Mine. Uh-huh. And most of it is just about the things he wants to do to Galavant.
Yes, and it's pretty great.
Another one of my favorite songs.
It is a pretty great song. And I think it's a great song because it has a funny setup. Like, you think, given that the show is kind of raunchy and that it leans on that for quite a bit of its humor, you think that the song he's going to launch into will be a song about all of the things he's going to do to Magdalena.
Right.
Except that it's not.
Except it's not.
Because that's not actually what he's thinking about.
No.
Despite the fact that he's basically been celibate for years.
Yeah. And he can't get it out of his mind because Magdalena can't stop bringing up Galavant. Mm-hmm. And it's driving him crazy.
And that's the only reason she keeps bringing him up. She's not like obsessed or in love with Galavant. I know. She just wants to make King Richard feel terribly about himself. And it's working,
And she knows how to do it. So the joust happens.
Yes.
The hilarious thing is Princess Isabella has drugged Jon Hamm the night before. Well, so he wakes up hungover as hell.
Yep.
And Galavant has worked out too much, so he is too stiff to move. Here's where I want to take y'all behind the podcast for a second.
He slept on the horse, Joy.
He did. He slept on the horse. How'd you get on the horse? I slept on the horse. You slept on the horse? This is my full range of motion, and he kind of lifts up his shoulders for a second. I was listening. I was a bad student. I was doing my homework at 9 a.m. on the bus coming into school.
Nice.
So I was finishing up this episode in the car ride home just before we were about to record, and I was playing it on my phone and in the car with my wife, and I'm playing the scene where it's the slowest joust ever, and she can't see it, but she is laughing so hard. She laughed for the entire scene while she's driving, and she's just like, I can see it. I can see it in my mind's eye.
That's amazing.
Joust on the planet.
I loved the slowest joust ever. Just Galavant can't move. Jon Hamm is so hungover, he's basically still drunk.
Yes.
And then the two of them in slow motion touch the other person with their jousting stick, whatever you call that thing. A lance?
Yeah, a lance.
Who knows?
Probably a lance.
And then they slowly push each other off each other's horses and fall to the ground.
And they fall in unison.
And they aren't even technically pushing each other. It's like the horses are walking forward, and so the lance is sticking into the next person. You know?
Mm-hmm. And the poor guy who's running the joust comes out to announce, like, trying to figure out if someone actually won that or not, and then decides whoever can stand up first is the winner.
Yes. And Galavant gets up first, which, like, brings the entire motif of this episode together because, you know, the running theme in this episode is that what makes something about how what makes a hero isn't whether or not the hero gets knocked down, it's whether the hero gets back up, right?
Right.
And that's Princess Isabella's little motivational speech to Galavant, and then he gets up. And there it is. He did it.
He did it.
He did it. He's a hero now. Sort of.
He is a hero now. And in our B plot, we have King Richard and Magdalena basically trying to just eat dinner together. And obviously King Richard is like trying to make an effort of like, you know, wanting this marriage to work and wanting Magdalena to be happy. And meanwhile, the cook is like doing airplane noises and Magdalena is not interested because he's acting like such a child. Like, how is that? That's not sexy at all. It's just not. So, so Gareth sort of takes the king aside and is just like, you know, and here's where that dated kind of comes in of like, you got to man up. What's that smell? Testosterone. It's like, okay, we get it. Yeah, sure. Okay.
I know.
What is hilarious, though.
The two things. Okay, sorry. Do that first.
No. But what is hilarious, though, is the belch. He drinks the ale from the bottle. Because, like, the stuff that's, is it weird that, like, with the eyes of 2022, I'm just like, the non-gendered stuff is still hilarious. Like, I don't care what gender you are. If you belch like that and go, do you with it? I'm going to laugh.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to fall down laughing. That's just it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's done in that way that, like, Gareth is kind of a medieval bro, right?
Right. And the thing is,
like, he's just a mountain of muscle.
Even within the context of the show, like, the show establishes that Gareth is giving him bad advice.
Yes.
Right? So even though man up to make a woman attracted to you is super cringy, because it's coming from Gareth and because the show sets him up as someone who, like, the king really only asked him for advice because the king has literally no one else in his life.
I know.
It, like, that took a little bit of the cringe factor away for me, I think.
Well, and also we already have an in-canon cringe moment where Gareth is like, I like him real skinny. Like, well,
that's what I was going to say. I was going to say the two, like, real 2015 shine moments were the man up comment and the fat jokes. Could have done without the fat jokes. That was just unnecessary. So that one rubbed me the wrong way more than the whole man up situation.
Yeah. And the thing is, I mean, they both rubbed me the wrong way, but the like, this sort of gets into what I talked about. I forget if it was in Kipo in one of the previous seasons about, like, if you have an in-character character, rewind. Let's try that again. If you have an in-show, in-canon character comment on someone else and how someone else is being a real prat.
Yeah.
Then it makes more sense. Like, then I feel better about it. Right? Like, I feel better about the show itself commenting on how this person super sucks. And, like, they suck because of these comments. And, like, King Richard instantly is like, dude, no. Yeah. Like, especially like she
weighs
with
100 pounds soaking wet. Yeah.
Well, like, even that of just like, could you not?
Yeah.
Could you not? You know, I'm trying to do something here. Stop it. And, like, that makes me actually feel better about the show as a whole. right? So like you can have somebody saying some truly heinous things, but as long as you have an in-canon version of like, you know, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, no. No, stop.
And it's coming out of the mouth of a character like Gareth.
Exactly.
Who the show is just kind of undermining as it continues. Like it's
previously
not like,
established.
Yeah, it's not like Princess Isabella is saying stuff like that.
Exactly. So sorry, just wanted to rewind to that because I was like, oh, I forgot we had that. Because it's even in the song, like King Richard says some truly awful things, but they're not like terrible.
I mean, genocidal war is pretty bad.
Genocidal war is pretty bad. But, you know, he doesn't like cross any other lines. Did I just say that? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's fine.
He doesn't cross any
war is perfectly
lines.
Fine. But so he finally has this dinner with Magdalena, and they're not like super grossed out by each other, and they're having a conversation.
Yeah,
right? Like they're getting to know each other. This is where we get the story about the Jenny goat. Of I had a goat named Jenny. I had a pet goat, and then one day we didn't have enough food, so my parents made me go out, kill the goat, skin the goat, and cook the goat for dinner. And now I just eat. I just eat for sustenance and try not to think too hard about it, right? And like, there's this moment that King Richard has of like, it feels like a moment between them, right? And
yeah,
I really like that. And this is where maybe You're Not the Worst Thing Ever comes in, because Galavant and Princess Isabella, like Galavant's just won the joust. He's just gotten her back her family jewel, which was on par with a chicken, apparently. A
rooster. Yeah, collateral.
Yeah, collateral. And won them some money. And then you have King Richard and Magdalena having just this nice dinner. And like, I mean,
don't forget, in the midst of the training montage, we also got a brief thirst trap from Galavant, which is when Princess Isabella is first attracted to him. And then we have the very tropey moment after he's triumphed, where she like goes to give him a hug. And then, of course, his entire body is stiff and he can't move. So she ends up anime style falling on top of him. Yes. And that is why they're attracted to each other, according to the canon of the show.
Yeah, it's a very physical attraction with them at first, which isn't to say that King Richard and Magdalena wasn't also very physical.
No, I think that was like the opposite of physical. I think they both realize that they're kind of messed up people and have trauma and like watching and like taking that out on other people. Like I think that's what they connected on.
I mean, maybe. Maybe. It's entirely possible. But then, so we have the song of like, maybe we could be an item. Maybe it's not as bad as I originally thought it was, you know, kind of thing. Which I love. I love that song to pieces. It might be my favorite song in almost the entire show.
Nice.
It's up there. It's like in my top 3. And yeah, so we have that moment. We have Isabella almost telling Galavant about, the thing, but then she doesn't because Sid interrupts her. And, and then they're back on the road again. Did I miss anything else about the ending of episode 2?
I guess like very, very lightly, even though Magdalena and King Richard have that moment together, as soon as King Richard points it out, and says, I knew it. I knew I could get you. I knew you would grow to love me. She proceeds to just like bristle again and then calls him unlovable, tells him that the only reason this woman that he was talking about in his childhood story, Pearl maybe was her name, I don't remember, ate with him, is that his parents were paying her to do that. And then she storms out of the room and King Richard finds comfort in Gareth's arms.
Who hugs a little too hard.
A little too hard. Well, old habits.
Trying to squeeze the life out of the king. Please don't do that.
Which brings us, I think, to one more thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that does.
/ I guess the question of if we were not recording this podcast episode, would I continue watching this show? Yeah, I would. The show has intrigued me. I'm going to give it a solid chance. I like the songs. I like the characters so far. I'm interested to see where the show goes. It's hard to imagine an entire season spent on this little story arc. But the episodes are also really not very long. And they're not as jam-packed as a Kipo episode, right? So it's okay when in an episode, the only two things that happen are there's a joust and then two characters have dinner.
You know, these episodes are so short.
So short.
And you could you could basically, if we weren't taking our time with this for a podcast, you could easily watch like the first season in a day and then the second 100%. Season the next day. Like,
yeah, this show's like popcorn.
Yeah, you could take a weekend and finish this whole show. I think my one more thing is the cook.
Oh, love it. Okay.
We haven't really talked about the chef.
Who, by the way, I was writing in my notes for longer than I care to admit, Jeff as that character's name.
Right, because we don't have a name for him, do we?
No, they just say chef, but I thought they were saying Jeff, and I thought it was a joke that he was like Chef Jeff. And then I realized at a certain point that is incorrect, and they were saying chef.
I have bad news for you. I don't think he actually has a name in the actual show. I believe his name is just Chef.
Let's headcanon the situation and call him Chef Jeff, because I think that's fantastic.
Chef Jeff is pretty good. Not gonna lie, Chef Jeff is pretty good. I love his little face. I love that he has a big giant honking nose. He's just he is a tiny, tiny man and needs to be protected. He's precious. And King Richard has killed a lot of his family.
So much of his family.
So we need to protect him. And he's precious. He's so cute. And I love to see, I don't want to spoil it too much, but like he also eventually has one of my other favorite songs in the whole show.
Oh, nice. So, okay, that's exciting. I'm glad that they give him a little something to do, which, you know, I kind of got the idea that they would, because he's clearly becoming part of King Richard's very small posse.
Very small posse. And he is, you know, he's very good for like comic relief. He does great faces. He's, you know, he's a good punching bag, you know, for stuff, literally in some cases, because Gareth will just punch him. Yeah. So
don't get too close to Gareth.
Yeah, exactly.
Or, you know, at your own risk anyway.
Yes.
Okay, my one more thing is Princess Isabella's hot dress moment.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
How do you not love Princess Isabella's hot dress moment? Like, come on. She takes off her long-sleeved coat, and underneath she has the thing with no sleeves and like the high slit. And she's like teaching Galavant, whose name I forgot very briefly. That's what that pause was.
I mean, you were paying too much attention to Isabella's dress.
How do I not? It was like a very Zorro moment. Do you know the scene? You know the scene that I'm referencing.
I do.
See, I've seen some things.
Yes.
And it was a very Zorro moment. And it was fantastic. But I did also think that it was funny that, at least thus far, the attraction is fully one way. Because Galavant is just so focused on King Richard and Magdalena that he has no eyes for Isabella. And so, hot dress or not, Galavant isn't quite there yet.
Yeah, it is a little one-sided at this point in time.
For now.
But that eventually it'll shift. Like, this show will make it shift.
I have assumed as much. I'm just waiting to see when and how it happens.
Well, because also, like, Magdalena is such a brat. Like, no, like, this is the other thing too, is like, you have so much sympathy for Galavant. Like, even if you don't like him right off the bat, you have a lot of sympathy for him pretty early on. And like, I don't tend to like very selfish, sort of conceited types of characters. They usually turn me off real fast. But like, the thing about Galavant is like, he got kicked when he was already down, and I can't help but feel for him a little bit. And so the more he like goes after Magdalena, the more you're like, no.
Buddy, no.
No, buddy, no. Buddy, no.
And that, I think, is as good a spot to stop as any.
Yes.
On a buddy, no.
We did it.
Pretty excellent. Okay, so with that, we would love to hear from you. Please check us out at Binge O'Clock Pod on Twitter and Facebook, where you can answer the question, what is your favorite Ren Fair? You can also email us at bingeoclockpod@gmail.com. And don't forget, we have a Patreon. Find us at patreon.com/BocPod.
That's right. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your loved ones. Tell the live lobsters in your life about Binge O'Clock, and we will see you next time.